Well, attorneys for the 6 Baltimore police officers charged in the death of Freddie Gray want the case dismissed. They're also calling for the state's attorney, the state's attorney there, Marilyn Mosby, to recuse herself, to be taken off the case. This as the Department of Justice launches an investigation into the Baltimore Police Department. Joining me to discuss, Milwaukee Sheriff David Clarke and CNN political commentator and Morehouse professor Marc Lamont. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Marc, let me begin with you. Do you think that this investigation into the Baltimore PD is justified? Should the Department of Justice be doing this?
Oh, absolutely. And I would say that prior to the Freddie Gray death, there's ample evidence that there has been a practices problem. There has been a structural problem. There have been numerous complaints by citizens. There have been payouts made to people for excessive force, et cetera. I think many towns, I think it'd be great if major cities all around the country did this. The DOJ doesn't have the resources to do every city, but when we see evidence like this, I think it's a great thing. We have nothing to lose here.
Sheriff, I know you disagree. You told me last hour you think this is all politically motivated and it shouldn't happen, but does Marc have a point that what's the harm in taking a look and evaluating police forces in major cities?
Well, first of all, it's an interesting point of view. I think we're working on the wrong thing. Just 2 months ago, President Barack Obama held up the Baltimore Police Department under Commissioner Batts along with Mayor Rawlings Blake and said the Baltimore Police Department was the model that should be adopted by agencies all across America for unbiased policing. So they went from 2 months ago being a model police agency to now all of a sudden being an organization that is has nothing but a bunch of rabid racist ogres. And the two things are mutually exclusive. You can't go from one, and I'm not going to let people get away with this. 2 months ago, Baltimore PD was the model. The mayor sat on that 21st century task force that was put together by President Obama. She was taking bows for her police department, but now for political expediency, she throws them under the bus for deflection.
Marc, do you have a point?
That's the question of, I mean, they might be mutually exclusive, but why are we presuming that the case made 2 months ago was the correct one and that this one is incorrect when there's evidence to suggest that this moment is correct? And if you and I can't decide who's right, whether the president 2 months ago was right or whether the mayor is right now, why not have a DOJ investigation? There's still not an argument for why a DOJ investigation shouldn't be made. The only argument you've made is that the president may be wrong about policing in Baltimore 2 months ago.
So let me throw this out there. We know that Commissioner Batts has said there is work to be done in my police department, and I'm doing it, and I'm leading it.
Yeah.
We also know that the city of Baltimore, Sheriff, has paid out $5.7 million in settlements since for events since 2011, 102 civil suits alleging police misconduct. Does that show that there is something that needs to at least be looked at?
Not at all. In the litigious society we live in with these torts that are brought against municipalities, they always know that it's cheaper to just pay these things out than to litigate them. And I think it does a disservice to the people who are being accused of this stuff, but that's what this is about. It's easier and cheaper to just pay for a settlement than it is to take it its full course through the courts. So I think that means nothing.
One of the things, Marc, that we're hearing...
That's possible, but...
Go ahead.
No, I mean, it's possible that not every case is real, and sometimes people do fight cases through civil means rather than criminal means or through other means, because I don't dispute that. But the fact of the matter is there are hundreds of complaints here, millions have been given out, and again, no argument has been made as of yet as to why it hurts anybody to do a DOJ investigation. If the Baltimore Police Department is doing the right thing here, there's absolutely nothing to worry about. It'll come up clean. I don't understand why, if we trust Barack Obama's word so much that we're casting aside all the evidence to say, well, it can't be bad because Obama said it wasn't bad 2 months ago, then let's trust the DOJ under his presidency to do a good job investigating it.
I want you guys to take a listen to this because, as you know, the police union and the attorneys for these 6 officers have called for the state's attorney, Marilyn Mosby, to recuse herself, to be taken off of this case. They say there should be a special prosecutor. Our Sarah Seidner in Baltimore spoke to Mosby about any potential conflict of interest in this case. Listen.
Can you do this without a conflict of interest.
There is no conflict of interest. I mean, I'm going to prosecute. I'm the Baltimore City State's Attorney. My jurisdiction covers every district in Baltimore City. There's a number of crimes that take place in Baltimore City, and unfortunately in the district that we live. Where is the conflict?
Yeah.
Would I have to take myself away from every case or crime that takes place in West Baltimore? That makes absolutely no sense.
Sheriff, do you think that she should be the prosecutor on this case?
Well, that's for her to decide. I'm not going to get involved in the conflict of interest. Of course, there's a conflict of interest here, but I don't think that that's at the heart of the matter for me as an experienced homicide investigator. The problem I had, the problem I have is the speed at which she brought these charges forth. She received the Baltimore police investigation on a Friday, and within 24 hours, she comes out with these charges. That is an incredible amount of speed. Having done this myself in terms of investigating and taking and being a part of a charging conference, I've never gotten a homicide charge issued in under 2 or 3 days, because you have to be very deliberate. There's volumes of reports that have to be read word for word. You want to find out the weaknesses of your case. You want to go through all of the evidence, forensically test. You take your time, because mistakes can be made when you rush. And we're seeing already by some legal scholars who have pointed out many of the mistakes that are present in this case. And I think it's going to be problematic for her to find proof beyond a reasonable doubt because she rushed this thing.
And we'll see what happens. There's that 30-day time limit when she has to have the grand jury, or she has to have a judge find probable cause. Mark, I want you guys to address this, because there was an interesting piece in the Baltimore Sun today talking about how some officers in Baltimore are scared of doing their job, scared to police because of potential blowback. Mark, does that concern you?
I mean, I kind of want to be snarky and say if they're scared to go out in the streets every day and walk, that's how citizens feel in Baltimore for 50 years. But to answer your question more appropriately, I think that if you do your job, you have a really good chance of having nothing to worry about. It's not as if the law has a propensity for going against cops. If anything, cops typically get the benefit of the doubt. What police officers are seeing over the last 10 to 20 days and maybe the last 6 months or 9 months around the country is that people are beginning to have some doubts. People aren't always giving police the benefit of the doubt. Our police deserve transparency. They deserve due process. They deserve the rule of law. They deserve all the same protections that citizens get. I don't think that we should take that away from them simply because they have a tough job. Or because of these controversies. But at the end of the day, police have to be held accountable just like everybody else. Do your job and, hey, get a body camera, and you'll have absolutely nothing to worry about.
Sheriff, to you, I mean, your officers, what are you seeing on the ground in Milwaukee?
Well, that's a tipping point, you know, and it's called depolicing, where officers won't be as assertive as they should. Look, if the Baltimore citizens and residents are afraid to go out on the street in their community, it isn't because of the police, it's because of black criminals. Look at the black-on-black crime rate in Baltimore. 90% of the homicides, the victims are black. 90% of the perpetrators are black as well. They have the 5th highest murder rate in the nation and the 7th highest violent crime rate. That's why the people of Baltimore are afraid to go out into the streets.
That's not true, though. I mean, I speak to people in Baltimore, and the same thing happens in my town of Philadelphia and New York. They're not competing claims here. You can be scared of gang violence and black-on-black violence and be scared of the police. They can both be true at once. And the truth here is that people are saying that they are not only afraid of violence in the street, they're also afraid of law enforcement. They also don't feel protected by law enforcement. They also don't feel like they have the protection of law to call law enforcement when bad things happen. And if you're saying that none of that is true simply by pointing to a black-on-black crime rate, I think you're missing the point. I mean, again, they're not competing claims. Why can't they both be true?
Sheriff?
That's an actual question. Why can't they both be true?
I'm not saying that they're both. I'm not saying they're not both true. I'm saying look at the rates, all right? Are the police committing violence against citizens in the same rate that black criminals are attacking, raping, robbing, and pillaging other black citizens in the city of Baltimore? So, yeah, they can both be true, but the rates at which those things are occurring, they're not even close.
Guys, thanks for joining me.
Well, I don't think anyone is.
We're out of time. I got to leave it there. Thank you very much. Mark, Sheriff Clarke.
Thank you,
Good to have
Poppy.
you on.
Good to talk to you, Mark.